Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the online closing event of our PROPAR project. With our partners from Poland, Romania, Serbia, and Hungary, we travel to each country to learn about how better support families with an autistic member and adults with autism. In our coming presentations, we will share these experiences with you. But first of all, we are happy to announce to you that Dr. Stephen Shore is going to talk about this topic too. Stephen was nonverbal until the age of 4 and was diagnosed with atypical development and strong autistic tendencies and was recommended for institutionalization. With much support from his parents, teachers, wife, and others, Stephen is now a full-time professor at Adelphi University in New York. In addition to working with children and talking about life on the autism spectrum, Stephen is an internationally well-known educator, consultant, and author of lifespan issues. We are really happy and grateful that Stephen could accept our invitation and is now going to talk why it is extremely important to help and support families of autistic children. He is going to explain to you how autistic people are different from others and how differently they experience the world around them. Let's give the floor to Dr. Shore.
And if you focus on these details, you will see, for example, that this yellow boot is missing on the bottom, but it's here on the top. If we look at the brown horse, we see that the bridle is blue here, and we see that it's red up here. And there's a number of other differences, about 12 other differences. And just to make sure you get them all, here they are. And I've probably missed a few as well. And you can see that there's a number of differences between the two pictures as indicated by the lines and the circles. So as we consider these pictures, what we've looked at, now comes a quiz. And I've got 4 questions. What is it a picture of? Most people will remember that it's a carousel or a merry-go-round. What animal is in the foreground? I'll give you a hint. It was white. It was a zebra. Some people may remember a horse. Now, the second 2 questions are more difficult. What color is the animal behind the first one? How many animals are in the row closest to us? These are harder to remember. However, I believe in errorless learning. And here we go. Everybody gets an A. Everybody gets 100. Now, the reason I bring this up is that I forced you to perceive these pictures as most autistic people perceive the environment. We focus on details, often at the expense of the whole. And if we look at how that's described clinically, it's considered as a deficit in central coherence by focusing on the little details and missing the proverbial forest for the trees. However, my question to you is, what situations exist where it's advantageous to be detail-oriented? And some situations that come to mind include working in IT, perhaps being a lawyer, being an accountant, mathematician, and there's many others where it's advantageous to focus on those details. And in fact, it might even be possible to say that if we put a non-autistic person in these situations, that they have a deficit in detail-oriented thinking. So what that suggests is that we can flip what we often consider as challenges and weaknesses and consider them as strengths. It requires that we reconsider how we think about the characteristics of autism. And here are the big 3, often referred to as deficits in communication, social interaction, and restricted interests. Again, what can we do to flip them around and make use of these characteristics. What is my son or daughter good at? A parent often asks me. And I'll respond with, how do they spend most of their time? Or would they if you let them do it? We tend to spend more time doing things we like to do. The things we like to do,
általában
we tend to be good at.
ugye
And this is
abban
where we can
szeretünk,
begin
azzal
to
szeretünk
match
több
those
időt
interests and
tölteni,
strengths,
amelyben
possible
jobbnak
vocational
érezzük
and
magunkat,
avocational
amiben
possibilities.
jobbak
So what
vagyunk.
I'm interested in is, what are the
Tehát ami
strengths? What are the
engem
abilities?
érdekel itt,
What can
melyek az
the autistic
erősségek,
person
melyek
do?
azok a
What are
képességek,
those
amelyeket meg tud
interests? The two
tenni az
are
autista
closely
ember,
aligned.
mik
What
azok
kind
a
of
dolgok,
mind does the
amik
person have?
érdeklik, milyen lelke
When
van,
we think
milyen
of autism, we
gondolatai
often
vannak
think
az
of people who are
embernek.
visually
Tehát
oriented.
általában,
And I
ugye,
think
hogyha
most of
az
us are.
autizmusra gondolunk, akkor nagyon
And
erősen vizuálisan
it's
orientált
something
emberre gondolunk.
strange just happened to the computer.
Most
Oh,
valami
sharing
furcsa
is
történt
paused. I have to see how I can
a
bring this back.
gépemmel,
Bring
megpróbálom
your shared window to the
visszacsinálni
front.
a képernyő megosztást.
I wonder where it went. All right, let's start again. I'm going to stop
Egy
the share.
pillanat.
Oh, it looks like the Google Drive suddenly quit, unexpectedly quit. So let's get it back, and we'll continue right where we left off. Here we are. Let's see if we can bring that back.
Megpróbálom visszahozni a képernyőmet.
Computers can really be flaky, and they get flaky
Néha
at the
furcsák
time
a
when you most need them,
gépek.
and they just
Amikor a leginkább szükség van rájuk,
flake out on your butt.
akkor bizony néha
You can show the computer who's boss. And here we are again.
Hát itt vagyunk
And
újra,
hopefully the computer will continue
és
to
reméljük, hogy
do what it's supposed to do.
sikeresen tovább
Kind of
tud
mind.
menni.
We tend to be visually
Tehát
based.
ilyen
That's what we
lelkünk
often
van,
think of
tehát
it.
ugye
And
vizuális
for
orientált
those of us on the
világban
autism
vagyunk,
spectrum. However, I know many autistic
de
people who
van
are so
nagyon sok
non-visually
olyan
based that they can't even read a
autista,
map.
aki
So
például
perhaps
nagyon
what we can say
vizuális,
is
de
that
nem
while
tud
the
például
processing style
térképet
and how we
olvasni,
think will probably be
tehát
visual, it's not always going to be.
a
And whatever it
feldolgozási
is,
stílusuk
going to be to an extreme,
eltérő,
and often to the exclusion of the other processing
és
styles.
van olyan
So
is,
what that
hogy
translates to
extrém, tehát
is
egy áramlás
that the things we're good at,
stílusában
we're
látják az
incredibly good at.
egész
The things we're not so
információt,
good
ami
at,
bejön, és a többit kizárják.
that can be
Vannak dolgok,
pretty
amelyekben
challenging, and we're
jók,
going to need
vannak
support. And
dolgok,
often
amelyekben
won't
nem
be that
annyira.
much in the middle. And this will show up frequently during, for example, IQ testing.
Például az
Well, it doesn't matter what the number is at the end, because
az az
I've seen all
érdekes,
kinds
hogy
of
teljesen
ridiculous numbers
mindegy, hogy
for
mi a
autistic
vége
people
egy
on
IQ
IQ tests.
tesztnek
But what
egy
you will often
autista
see
ember esetében,
is that
tehát
there'll be
különféle
places where at the
szintek,
90th,
normális
95th,
szintek is
99th
lehetséges.
percentile, and other
Hát
places
lehet
where we may be
99,
at the 10th or
95
5th
nagyon magas,
percentile. So that widely varying skill set is a characteristic of autism.
tehát ami érdekes, hogy nagyon
let's find a way
sokféle
to use
képességük
that
van az
characteristic of autism,
autistáknak, és
which is
ami
what brings me to those
érdekes,
four
hogy a
A's
sajátos
of
autista
autism.
tulajdonságait,
The
vagy
four A's of autism
különleges
begin
képességeit
with
hogyan használja. Az
awareness.
autizmusnál, ami
And this
nagyon
is something
fontos,
that
hogy
we've
a
been
tudatossággal kell
doing
tehát
for the past
tudatában kell
generation or
lenni
longer.
annak,
So national and
hogy
international
valaki
organizations have provided us with information on how to recognize autism, whether it's at home, at work, in the community, employment, and everywhere, and increasing numbers of autistic people learning that, well, they very well just may be autistic, usually from the internet, and then verifying that with a formal evaluation. So this awareness step builds a solid foundation for the next one, which is acceptance. And what acceptance is it means working with those characteristics that I described before, acceptance. And what that means is, for example, let's say we have a child who has difficulties with math. They don't like math, they're not motivated to do it. And we also know that this child likes using a flight simulator on the computer. So we call in a consultant, and the consultant identifies this preference to use a flight simulator as a powerful reinforcer that perhaps we can use to motivate the child to do math. You do your math for 20 minutes in class, and we'll give you the last 10 minutes on the flight simulator. Well, that's working against the characteristics of autism. in this case, this highly focused interest. A better way to do it would be to work with this interest. And there's plenty of mathematics involved in flying airplanes and putting the two together, which will then make the subject of math intrinsically reinforcing. And then there's appreciation. And appreciation is where autistic people are valued for what we can contribute to society. And for example, information technology. We're seeing some of the larger IT companies, such as SAP, Microsoft, Apple, Google, and so on, actively seeking autistic individuals as their employees because they know many of us can do things that others just can't, or we can do them much faster. However, my question always is, what about everybody else? What about those of us, actually the majority of us, who are not IT geeks? So computer geekery, it's a myth that we're all computer geeks. And no, we're not. It's a minority, but a big enough group for the IT companies to take notice and make a big deal about it. So that's good. Many of us have strengths in the arts and other areas. And what about those of us who need more support? Need support in communication and maintaining our daily schedule. And for this example, I think of an individual in Florida who doesn't talk very much, uses an assistive communication device, he needs daily support, but he loves nothing more than to pull laundry out of a hot dryer and fold it perfectly. And he folds this laundry faster and better than anybody else with great enthusiasm. I know many people who would like help with their laundry, and he would be happy to help you too, but you have to pay him to do it. This is his job. He spends all day at that laundromat, pulling clothes out, folding them, and enjoying it. And he's appreciated for what he contributes to society. He's fulfilled and he's productive. The last day is action, and this is the glue, the work that we have to put into to glue all these three steps together. So my charge to you is, what actions are you going to take as parents, as those of you who support individuals on the spectrum, and for any of you who are autistic, what actions will you take to climb these stairs of awareness, acceptance, and appreciation to focus on the strengths that you have in order to lead fulfilling and productive lives? So what brings me here to talk to you about autism? We'll take it from the beginning. Things were pretty typical at first. At 24 hours of age, my wife says I looked like an egg. And then at 18 months, like what happens to about 30% of us on the spectrum, the regressive autism bomb exploded. And this is where I lost functional communication, had meltdowns, withdrew from the environment. In a brief, I became a very autistic little kid. And this was such a difficult time for my parents. Here they have a child who is interacting and communicating just like any other child up to about 18 months, meeting all the developmental milestones, maybe even meeting them a little bit early. And this regression occurs. And now I don't want to be touched by my parents, held by them, lost communication, have meltdowns for reasons that they cannot understand. And it was very difficult. There was so little known about autism in those days. So little known about autism that it took my parents an entire year to find a place for diagnosis. When they did, the doctor said, well, we've never seen such a sick child. And the doctor said, send him to an institution. Well, my parents, like we see so many parents today, like we see the parents who are in the audience, you advocate for your children. And that's what my parents did. And they convinced the school to take me in about a year. And it was during that year that my parents implemented what we would refer to as an intensive home-based early intervention program. And this was a program emphasizing music, movement, sensory integration, narration, and imitation. It probably looked like one of the more developmental approaches we have today, such as the Miller method, or floor time, or relational development intervention. And I also see some of daily life therapy in there as well as practiced at the Boston Higashi School. Now, I'm just using today's terminology to describe what my parents did. But in those days, even the concept of early intervention didn't exist. It was just parents desperately trying to reach their child. Now, at first, they tried to get me to imitate them. Imitation is a time-honored educational strategy. It works most of the time. But for many of us autistics, we lack the ability to imitate, especially when young. And it may have to do with differences in mirror neurons. So whatever the case is, my parents flipped it around and they imitated me. And once they did that, I became aware of them in my environment. And I believe the key implication is that as a prerequisite, as a requirement for doing good work with an autistic person, you have to develop a trusting relationship first. You have to meet the person where they are. You build that trusting bond, and then you can move on. And in fact, I see that happening in people who are best at being with autistic people, be it parents, therapists, and others. Meet the person and then move on. That holds true for everybody else as well, whether you're autistic or not, whatever level of education you're at. So the work that my parents did, speech began to return at age 4. And then I entered the school that initially rejected me. I believe that we have the technology, we have the know-how, we have the wherewithal so that autistic people leading fulfilling and productive lives can become the rule rather than the exception. And rather than autism being a bomb, we can turn away from the closed doors of disorder, deficit, and disability and look at the open door of ability. And rather than autism being a bomb, autism becomes da bomb. And the person can be very, very successful. Such is the case of Robert. Robert, a young adult on the autism spectrum, would have been diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, or now it's referred to as autism, needing level 1 supports. Let's take a look at these characteristics: communication, social interaction, restricted interests, and not express them as deficits, but just as characteristics. And what are the employment implications of this person in providing this transportation system information to lost patrons at a very busy train station? Now, those of us who speak, we tend to be detailed, factual, data-driven, truthful, repetitive. But then again, how many times have you asked someone to repeat directions when you're lost? So I think this works. Social interaction, a brief greeting, a request for directions. The person says thank you and goodbye. And that works really well. Where does Robert get this information? His coworkers have to look it up in a reference. However, because this is let's not call it a restricted interest. Let's reframe this as a highly focused interest or passion. He's memorized this information. And because Robert is autistic, he outperforms his typical coworkers. And this is how we need to take a look at autistic characteristics. And actually, in many ways, for everybody else as well. We all try to find employment and try to spend more time doing things we like to do and that we're good at. So here I am at age 4. I entered the school that initially rejected me. I got reevaluated. Instead of being considered as psychotic and ready for an institution, I got upgraded to neurotic. So things were looking better. I also discovered the wonderful world of watch motors. I was found by my parents taking apart a watch with a sharp knife at age 4. I'd pop open the back, extract the motor, remove some of the gears, spin them around, and put it all back together again. The watch still worked and there weren't any pieces left over. Instead of looking at the closed door of disorder, deficit, and disability, my parents considered the open door of ability and soon provided all kinds of other devices to take apart and put back together again. So maybe, at least at this time, it looked like I could be a watchmaker or a watch repairman. I'd still need a lot of support in terms of communication and living as an adult, but at least this is something I can do. And that's why it's important to be aware of and to know what the interests and abilities are of your autistic child from early on. It doesn't mean that I have to become a watchmaker, but at least this is something that we could pursue. And perhaps it becomes an area of education later on and maybe employment. My parents made a big deal about it. They were building a good sense of self-awareness, which is critical for developing a sense of self-determination, which helps us make good adult decisions. So let's take a look at this case study. And we're going to look at Greg, the ball thrower. If there's a ball anywhere in the room, Greg is an elementary school pre-verbal child. He's on the spectrum. He throws it. He loves to do that. You try to remove the ball from him, it lasts at least a half an hour. It only happens with this specific object. It's written in his educational plan that all balls be kept out of sight. His teachers are not always successful in doing so. As a result, Greg is considered one of the school's most difficult students. So how do we go about determining why he does what he does? What can we do to allow Greg to successfully be in the room with the same room as a ball? And how can we implement this plan? Is there a way to increase social interaction with this fascination? So commonly what might happen is the balls will be identified as a reinforcer. And okay, Greg, now you need to sit down, pay attention, do whatever we ask you to do. And then during the break, you'll get a reinforcer called playing with the balls. And this might work the first time, but then when we try to take the balls away, break time is over, you get another meltdown and it just doesn't work. So what if we flip it around? What if we accept the characteristic of intense interests with an object? We don't understand why, we don't have to, but he's got this thing with balls. So maybe what I would do is I would come into the room with a whole sack of balls, dozens of them, different sizes, colors, weights, materials. And I immediately hand him a ball. And what he would do, he'd take it and he'd throw it. Okay, that's fine. I'd do this a number of times. Maybe I'd even present the ball in different locations, like a little bit higher, a little bit lower. Maybe I'd present it close to my face so that he orients to me while he accepts a ball. And what I'm doing is I'm developing a relationship with Greg through his favorite object. And once I do that, then I can start moving on to teaching whatever concepts need to be taught. Maybe we could direct the throwing to a barrel. It's the precursor of basketball. Maybe we could count balls. We could categorize them by colors. Maybe we could take them and give them to another person. Maybe he could open a box and take out the blue balls. And in that way, we're working with his characteristics, with his interests, and building that relationship initially. I'm meeting him where he is. And this is a strategy that's practiced in the Miller method. And it's a great way to make a good connection. However, it's COVID-19 and the schools are closed. What are we going to do to maintain and adjust Greg's schedule at home? How are we going to communicate changes in the best way he understands? And what are you going to do as Greg's caretaker or parent to support yourself so that you can be available to support Greg? So the first thing I would consider is keeping the schedules the same, as much the same as possible. So if he has a word picture schedule at home, everything stays the same right up until it's time to go to school. Maybe he walks to school, maybe he gets driven, maybe he takes a bus, however he gets there. Well, that's not happening anymore. So the picture of the bus comes down and a picture of the desk where Greg is expected to study at home goes up, and we go to that place of the house. Maybe it's a corner of a room, maybe it's a whole room, and that's where school starts. Maybe we'd even have an opening circle similar to what happens at school, where we take attendance of, well, all the family members. Are you all here? Let's even do what I often see happens in school, where the child, once the name is called, will take a picture of them off of a big poster stuck up there with Velcro, pull it off of the picture of home, and then move it and stick it onto a big poster of a school. And in that way, we're making adjustments where we need to, but we're keeping things the same as much as possible. How does Greg communicate? Well, he's pre-verbal, so it must be picture schedules of some sort. So let's just keep using them. And then finally, what are you going to do to take care of yourself? And as they say on airplanes, not that we're flying much anymore, at least until the pandemic is over, there'd always be this safety announcement where the flight attendant would tell you to put your own oxygen mask on before helping else. So that way you don't pass out and then be unable to help another person. So what are things that you enjoy? What do you do that relaxes you? You have to make sure that you do these things as well. So those are the big three. You maintain routines and adjust when needed. I've got my own routines. For example, all my morning routines remain the same, and then I would ride my bicycle to work. Well, that doesn't happen anymore. All my work is being done at home, just like you're seeing now, through a computer. So what that means is that I have to make sure, I have to be very mindful of how much movement I engage in during the day. All of this walking between classrooms and offices at school, that's all gone. I'm just at home. So what I've done is I make sure that I spin my elliptical bicycle for about 90 minutes every other day to make sure that I get the proper exercise. And that is an adjustment in my routine. I could put that up in a schedule. Certainly clear communication. If this had happened when I was a young child, age 4 or in grade school, it would have been helpful to have a picture word schedule to make sure I kept track of what I was doing. And then there's self-care. So what's one example of self-care? And this is something that parents can do, or something you can teach an autistic person to do. Sometimes you just have to breathe. And as you inhale calm from the environment. And as you exhale stress. You do this 3 or 4 times, and you're probably going to be more relaxed. So what are some ways that we can cope, both for you as a parent or caretaker of an autistic person, and what about the autistic person themselves? So we can look at this both ways. One is remain connected. Before, we could go to that person's house, or we'd meet them incidentally when going to the supermarket or out in the community or at a bar. Well, now we have to put more effort to remain connected to people who are important to you, and that holds true for both parents and for the autistic individual. We need to be careful about fusing with others or absorbing angst from others. Autistic people, contrary to the popular myth that we don't perceive other people's emotions or we don't have emotions, many of us actually perceive emotions more strongly than others, but we don't know what to do with them. And we tend to fuse to those emotions. So if you're feeling unusually anxious, look around and see if somebody else is anxious, and if you're getting anxious as a result of being with this person. Make sure you have plan A, plan B, and maybe even a plan C. So when the pandemic started, it seemed too dangerous to go out. That also meant no more shopping. So then I'd have to shop online and get deliveries. Well, now we go out and do our food shopping. However, we make sure to wear a mask and gloves and practice universal precautions in order to be safe. The great outdoors. Make sure you get outside. It's a bright sunny day here. It's been bright and sunny for the past few days. I make sure that I get outside. I make sure that I do it in a safe manner, keeping proper distance, keeping a proper physical distance. We often see the term socially distant. I think it's better to use the term physically distant, because being socially distant suggests that we don't want to talk to people. We don't want to interact with them. And we want to be a hermit. And I don't think that's what people intended. So we still need to interact, but we need to do it in a safe way. It's going to require more energy, more cognitive energy in order to get our things done. So there's all kinds of things we have to do in order to remain safe, in order to make sure we don't pick up the COVID-19 infection, and it requires additional procedures in terms of making sure you have proper protection. That takes extra time and extra cognitive energy. It's not just a simple matter of running out to the local store and picking something up, but you have to do all the things you need to do in order to remain safe. There's a number of resources that are available for support as well. One of them is Learn Autism. It's a relatively new group that I'm involved in. And this is the unique thing about this organization is that it's parent driven. And we use research-based videos. They're really short, they're like 1 or 2 minutes long, and they provide little snippets of information that's helpful to parents and others supporting autistic individuals to provide support. So I encourage you to take a look at this organization. Education. Many parents have become de facto teachers, educators for their children, supervising them at home when school is being taught remotely, or even in a hybrid situation where some information, some materials are being taught at home. So these are education companies. There's at least 100 of them now. And if you go to this link, you'll be able to find all these companies that have made their resources available to those supporting autistic individuals in education. So a lot of good ideas here. So here I am at age 6. Speech had pretty much returned. I entered grade school, kindergarten. I was a social and academic catastrophe. There was so little known, again, about autism. As a result, I was about a grade behind in most of my subjects. And there was a lot of bullying. I guess repeating the letter B over and over again didn't endear me to my classmates. Now school systems are beginning to realize that bullying is not a developmental phase that people need to go through. Academically, well, I would just spend most of my time going to the library, getting all the books on my favorite subjects, reading them, and then when I was done with that, after taking notes and copying diagrams, put them away and get another set of books. And these interests range from astronomy to aviation to electricity, volcanoes, earthquakes, and all kinds of areas. Sometimes I'd even wonder if there was more to school than just reading books on my favorite subjects. And I think what it translated to is that teachers didn't quite know how to reach me, but since I wasn't a behavior problem, they just left me to my own devices. And what I also found interesting at that time is that whatever I was interested in, it also seemed like that my parents were also interested in these things. So when I was interested in astronomy, we got a telescope and we'd look at the moon and various other things that in the heavens late at night. When I was interested in chemistry, my parents got me a chemistry set. So for parents, whatever your child is interested in, see if you can also find a way to be involved in that interest. And in brief, do a little bit of homeschooling, I guess is what my parents were doing, but in a more informal way. But we zoom up to age 13. You don't need to be autistic to have difficulties in middle and high school. But for me, it was actually easier because in middle and high school, as we start seeing courses, clubs, and activities based on particular interests, music being an interest, I joined the band. And now I had a structured activity to mediate my interactions with others. In fact, I got so taken up with music that I got it into my autistic head that I needed to learn how to play all the instruments. So I'd spend hours in the instrument closet, taking instruments apart, making discoveries, learning them. And while I didn't learn all the instruments, I did get it up to about 15. And then when I found that a requirement for a degree in music education was that you had to learn all the instruments, well, that just seemed to be the way to go. And that's exactly what I did for my bachelor's, my master's, and all of the my doctoral coursework in music. And then when it came time to write my dissertation, I started getting more interested in autism. So I defected to the School of Education and got my doctorate in special education. One of the reasons that I give music lessons to autistic children is that to develop interactions with others and relationships with others, involvement in the community as a musician. Also, music is just plain old fun. And then finally, I haven't figured out how to teach typical kids yet, so I just stick with the ones on the autism spectrum. They make a lot more sense to me. However, music is a very sensory activity. And I remember skipping a lot of jazz band rehearsals because as a trombone player, the trumpets behind me were just too loud. And no matter what I told the band director, he just didn't quite get it. One day I marched into his office with a set of alternate seating charts. He still didn't listen, so I'd skip these rehearsals. They were too loud and nobody could quite figure out why I was skipping rehearsals because there was so little known about sensory issues in those days. So let's take a look at the big three again. Maintaining routines. Bringing those school routines at home if your child is studying at home. Get in touch with your child's teacher, your therapist, learn what they're doing, and keep the schedule the same as much as possible. Here's a short yoga break. You breathe in, you clench your fist. You breathe out, you release. Do that 3 times. If you need a little bit more, you do the same thing. When you breathe in, your hands come together. And then when you breathe out, you pull your hands apart. More information, a social story. What is the coronavirus? For those of us who are helped with social stories, oh, that education company came in a second time. Well, I guess it's important enough to repeat. Again, dozens of companies that have made their resources available for those of us who are supporting autistic individuals in their schooling. We can look to people on the autism spectrum. Jean Holverstadt has come up with 19 tips to maintain your mental and physical health. This is by and for autistic people. However, this material is also can be easily generalized for parents and any others. How to structure your day. Next for Autism has many good resources for supporting yourself and supporting the autistic individual you support in order to get through your day, relating to schedules and other things that are important for us to survive and even thrive during these times of uncertainty. Oh, more ways to cope. Well, it's been a long time, but I suddenly find myself doing things that I haven't done for a long time. Maybe spinning one of those spinners. Other people may be rocking more, knitting, or carrying around this old stuffed cat, giving it a good squeeze, flapping your hands. All of these, what are often referred to as STEM activities, but I prefer to reframe as self-regulatory activities. Everybody engages in these types of activities, whether it's bouncing your leg, twirling your hair, or biting the end of your pen. You all do it in order to upregulate or downregulate so that you can pay attention. Well, as things become more stressful, as they are during a pandemic, we're going to engage in more of these activities. So no, this is not regression, but it's engaging in self-regulatory or coping actions. Take care of yourself. So whatever that is, we've already looked at 2 strategies for self-care. Maybe taking a bubble bath with a rubber ducky is something that helps you. And if that is, make sure you do it. Maintain your personal health. So if you're on medication, maybe a pill organizer could be helpful. And doing so that you can support the autistic person that you're supporting. When going outside, make sure you have a mask, gloves if needed, and also bring as little as possible. Whatever goes out has to be quarantined and or cleaned when you come back. So I'm really used to going out with a rucksack with my computer and various other things that I have on my back. And that way I have everything I need as needed. Well, these days, I could still do that, but then the rucksack and everything inside would have to be quarantined. So I'm very careful as to what I bring outside. Usually when I go out now, it's just the driver's license for ID and a credit card and whatever cash I'm going to use. And these 3 things are the only things that need to be cleaned and possibly quarantined later on. So being careful about what you bring outside, and because you're going to have to quarantine or clean it when you come back. And then there's protocols for returning home that we're going to look at in a little bit. Actually, maybe we should take a look at them right now. What are some of the things we can do when we come to home? Again, less is more. Take as little as possible. We have outside shoes and inside shoes. Leave the shoes that you wore outside, the bottom of the stairs, outside, garage, whatever. Give them a good quarantine, have a different set of shoes inside. Many people do that anyways, just to keep their houses clean. Now it's even more important. Food that you've either purchased or have delivered needs to be sanitized. Some foods can be easily washed in warm soapy water. Other foods cannot be washed, such as cake. It doesn't work well to wash cake, so you just have to quarantine it. Canned goods, you could just quarantine. That's easy. When I get home, I immediately put my clothes in the laundry basket and take a shower and scrub down. And you're going to need to reduce expectations as needed. You're not going to be able to do as much. You're not going to be as productive as you thought you might have been, or you were before the pandemic, because you're expending so much energy making sure that you're keeping safe. So we zoom up to college. College was a utopia. I had more friends. If I wanted to ride my bicycle at midnight, I could find someone just as strange as I was to also ride at midnight. Dating often occurs in college. That was something that I could never quite figure out. But fortunately, through a common interest in music, I was able to meet my wife at the university, and we've now been married for over 30 years. If you want to find out more about what life is like on her side of the spectrum, you can read her contributions to my autobiography. beyond the wall. And now I spend most of my time in a sheltered workshop for people with Asperger's syndrome, where we spend years and lifetimes perseverating on subjects that other people maybe don't want to listen to, but we make them listen. We also, at times, social interaction between community members could be improved. Some people refer to this place as a university. You'll find many of us autistic people as professors at universities, some of us diagnosed and aware that we're on the spectrum, others not. But if you want to find people on the spectrum, just check out your professors. And in closing, I want to emphasize that as we consider focusing on the strengths and the abilities of autistic people, there's huge diversity within the autism spectrum. And this diversity might even be greater than the diversity that we find outside of the autism spectrum. And that is why I often say that when you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. And I want to thank all of you, whether you're parents, other autistic individuals, professionals, and anybody here who is autistic, and certainly the organizers for making this possible. I want to thank all of you for what you're doing to make fulfilling and productive lives for autistic individuals the rule rather than the exception. So here are some of my books, some of them translated to other languages. And I think now we have a little bit of time for questions. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. We do have a little time for questions. We asked the participants to raise hands if they want to ask any questions, so they can do it now. And since then, I really would like to say thank you. And I personally always enjoying your stories. I love that you are sharing many personal stories, because it really gives hope for the parents. I'm really meeting hundreds of parents, and the final question is always, what is gonna happen with my child when she or he will be adult? So, and it's very difficult to predict when a child is a child. So, and it's amazing that you are showing a way and sharing your personal experience. So it's a kind of a future. And also, I would like to say thank you for all the practical tips and resources. You are always very generous to share, just like in this presentation. We have comments like thank you million times. And one question is that, so how do you manage your life right now during the COVID, COVID times?
Well, it's been a big adjustment. Previous to the pandemic, I was traveling to a different country once a month to talk about autism. So extensive travel. Probably traveling about 150,000 miles a year, maybe even more. I had presented about autism in 51 countries, including Poland, including Hungary. I'd like to come to Serbia when it becomes safe to travel again, and the same for Romania and many other countries. That has stopped, so it's been quite an adjustment. To now living at home. I've been home. My wife and I have been at home for since the middle of March.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we like each other, so that works out really well.
Yeah. That's very important, definitely. One more question. It came from Romania. Whether you have a sister or a brother?
Yes, I've got both.
Oh, wow.
I've got an older sister, 4 years older than I am. And I've got a brother who's 2 years older than I am. My brother was diagnosed with mild to moderate retardation. I think he has some autism thrown in for spice. And my sister, I used to think that she hogged up all of the neurotypical genes in the family.
Oh,
but we're finding out that that is very far from the truth.
Yeah, definitely. There are other million thank yous for you. We will, sending them because there are really nice comments about your presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you again, and I am sure that. First of all, I am so happy when after this COVID situation, you can come to Hungary. You know, you are always very welcome. So, and I hope we will meet soon. And this.
Oh yeah, I look forward to that.
Pandemic will end. And I am sure that my colleagues in the other countries are feeling on the same way. If you feel like you still can stay with us, now we are going to share our experience during our project, which was a 2 years long project. But if you feel like you also can leave. So thank you again for your time and effort.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yes, I look forward to that.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
And now I would like to introduce you our next speaker, who is Mrs. Judith Groma, and she is from Hungary, and she is one of the family member, a mother who was attending on our meetings, our PROPAR meetings, and now she is going to tell what she felt or what did he learn and what did she experience. So Judith, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for having me. Hi everyone. I would like to share my screen. Hopefully. Okay, so our life began as any normal family's life, with a man and a woman meeting and then a baby coming, and it seemed pretty nice. It was like a fairy tale at first, with the rainbow and everything. But fairy tales have evil characters, so we had some evil characters coming into our lives as well. So it was a normal fairy tale. First, we had sleeping problems with our little kid. Normally, kids have several naps during the daytime. Well, our kid wouldn't sleep. He would sleep only 5 to 10 minutes after us trying to make him into sleep for like 1 or 2 or 3 hours, which was kind of a big problem for us. Then he was breastfeeding for a long time, but at 6 months, I tried to introduce food, solid food to him, and he said, no, thank you, which also was a problem. So, well, this was team one, the problems that were coming to our life. And there was team two, mommy and daddy. As time went by, the fight was becoming really uneven between the two teams, the problems and mommy and daddy. So first we had already had the sleeping problem and the eating disorder. Then the lack of understanding instructions came to our life. Whatever I said, my little boy would not really get what I wanted from him, even though that he was and he still is a speaking little boy. Well, he started to use languages in a funny way as well. And we had potty training issues. He was 4.5. by the time this issue was solved already. And we also had aggressive behavior in our life. When he didn't want something, then he would kick and scream and shout and pinch and throw things. So that was also a problem. He also had anxiety. He was afraid of whatever that was new people, new places, new events, you name it. If it was new, he had anxiety. And most of the time, he wasn't really interested in cooperating with us as parents. He was also using his toys in an improper way. He would gather all the toys and take them to his bed and then just put them from one place to the other and then back and forth, and had no idea what to do at that time. And then we also had sensory issues. Things were too big, too small, too itchy, too scratchy, too hot, too cold, you name it. It was too something for one of his sensors. So team one had now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 members already, and the other team had only 1, 2. So this seemed to be quite uneven. So we tried to find the solution, and we tried to find what was behind the whole thing. And then at the age of 3, our boy was diagnosed with autism. So we brought in a few new members to our team to have an even battle. So we had an autism specific therapist, and then a psychologist, and then a special needs teacher, and a psychiatrist, and then an eating disorder therapist, a psychotherapist, and a helping dog. We are having a dog trained for our son to be a helping dog, so the dog could go to school with him as well. And we are just starting music therapy. So as you can see, well, most of the really hard behavior problems are more or less gone, and now the team seem to be equal, 1 and 2, 1 and 2. So this seems fine. We thought that we could just sit down and relax, but of course this never came true because people started judging us, and the family members wouldn't understand our situation, the way our kid behaved, his problems. And of course, most of the social events were either a big mess or more or less they disappeared. So in our life, isolation began. One by one, happiness and balance and hope were just gone. They were disappearing one by one, and we were just standing there with all the questionnaires in our head and had no idea what to do. But then, thanks to Mars Foundation and Jim Foundation and Erasmus and PROPAR, home came back to our life. And this was a 3-day trip to Poland where I met Jim Foundation on and all the incredible, really incredible people working there. There was an average building, but you cannot believe it. There was magic inside. Everything was nice and clear and bright, and all the people were relaxed and happy and smiling. So this gave me hope that if they could do it, maybe we can do something similar in Hungary. When I was getting an informal tour before the official program began, I walked around that, and I could see all these nice things that people were doing there, and it made me really relaxed to see that if autistic people in Poland can do such lovely things and they feel happy about themselves and they are appreciated and accepted, I guess we could do something in time in Hungary as well. I was given a tour. I could go to all the rooms, to the room where they were working, to the room where they were learning how to cook, to the room where they were receiving therapy, all kinds of therapy. And then lunch came, which was amazing. The taste, the way it was looking, it was just incredible. And then I found out it was made by the autistic people who were going to that institution every day, which made me even more relaxed. And I was also happy to see the art that they made during art therapy. And then I became aware of the fact that they have uh, all kinds of trophies because they have actors and they perform on a regular basis. They also have rooms that prepare the autistic people for everyday life and self-care. And thanks to Jim Foundation, this was us, and then this was us. And thanks to Csepkő Óvoda, which is the kindergarten where my little boy goes to, I was given a new goal. Instead of teaching English at all kinds of firms, I really want to improve the life of standard of autistic kids in Hungarian kindergartens. And I started all this mission at the own kindergarten of my kid. And I am really happy that it had already been a great place. And as you can see in this next picture, this is a Christmas celebration where all the kids can appear on stage no matter what state they are in, whether they're neurotypical or autistic, or they have some other learning difficulties. They can appear on stage and they are included, and nobody's left behind. And ever since I started working there, we introduced to all kinds of stuff to ease the life of kids. As I saw at Gym Foundation, we also started to introduce visual aid in our kids' life, and we also started to use stories and all kinds of other tools. The social story is about the voice that you can use at different places. We have a voiceometer that they can use, and they also like to use it because it's fun to move the arrow. We also have a placemat that shows where to put what and how to behave at lunchtime. We also transferred a therapy room into a sensory room, and now whoever is having a meltdown or whoever is worked up or just tired, they can come to this place and they can feel safe and calm down and then go back to their own room. And thanks to what the parents shared with me at Gym Foundation, which was the fact that one by one they became friends with all and with the similar kinds of parents who were bringing up autistic kids, and they managed to come up with their own little micro world where everything is possible. So isolation ended. And it not only ended for our family, it also ended for some other families at the kindergarten. So now we are friends, we visit each other, we have playtime together, we go on excursions together, and we even celebrate birthday together. So my worst fear that we would be isolated socially and my boy would not have any friends is something that will never happen. And now that all the bad things are eliminated, of course, we have everyday problems, but now we can focus on the good things. How my little boy's brain is working, like he has an incredible imaginary world, and he has rules that he can follow and daily routine that he likes. So my message to all the parents that sharing is vital, and it really makes life easier, and it gives fuel to the parents' superpower to make the world a better place one by one. So I strongly suggest for everybody to join a parent group today. I've been a member of a group long before I went to Gym Foundation, but the visit to Gym Foundation in Poland was the thing that really changed our family's life. So now it's again daddy and mommy and the kid and the fairy tale. So thank you very much for listening to me, and make sure that you join a parent group as soon as you can if you're not a member of one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judith. It was a really amazing presentation. I loved all your photos and pictures, and especially the the small signs of difficulties that you were using. And we're gonna give the possibility to Anna from the Gym Foundation to answer to all your praises. But first, we would like to ask Sunčica from Serbia to make her presentation. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you all. So hello, some of you might know me already, but my name is Sunčica and I come from Serbian Society of Autism. I also have a 41-year-old brother with autism, and he's the main reason why I'm here today. A few words about the society itself before I go on to my presentation. So the Serbian Society of Autism was founded in 1977, so a long time ago. By a group of parents and practitioners that remained throughout all the years. So today we grew stronger, of course. So now we have 15 local associations, but all of them, including us, are parental organizations. But we still love to hear from clinicians and practitioners because we believe that the partnership gives the best result. Speaking about partnership, today I will tell you from our side of view what we have learned through PROPAR project and from our dear partners. So now you should all be able to see the screen. So sharing is caring. This is a popular internet phrase, but quite true, because we have had the opportunity, being so long in the field of autism, we have had the opportunity to meet and share our experiences and talk to each other and, get all the ideas that we later implemented in our countries. So I don't have pictures because I assume that my partners would do a lot of pictures. So I decided to focus on three main messages from the PROPAR project. One are support services and activities offered by the partners. The other one is state support, and the third one are support activities offered by external partners of our partnerships. So for us, we learned a lot from all of our partners, so Marsh Foundation, Gym Foundation, and Key Association from Romania. And the first activity that I would like to talk about is the training for parents that are Zsuzsanna and Edith doing in Hungary. So it is very important to train parents because from the point of organizations, this somehow got lost during the years. We started with training the parents in support groups many years ago, but then came along the internet and the Facebook and all the online support groups. But I really think that it is important to take a step back and to go back to old school. So to train parents about autism treatments and the possibilities after receiving the diagnosis, because in that way you create a kind of a snowball effect. So you enlarge what you know and the knowledge that you transfer to others. Fundraising activities is one of an amazing activity operated by a Gym Foundation, because usually the non-government organizations which we are a part of often struggle to finance. So we are not state financed, so we usually operate by running projects or donations. And usually a lot of services for our kids are not covered by the state or simply just do not exist. So we reinvent the ways to offer those services. So it is really essential to learn how to attract and actually retain donations and partners in order to keep up with the good work. Because sometimes when we pilot the project and implement the service, we struggle for the sustainability of the service after the project ends. So this is also one of the things that is often overlooked by non-governmental organizations or parent organizations, because we tend to be a small groups, we don't employ a lot of people, and we usually focus on core problems or core issues. So I think that the fundraising activities is something that all of us needs to learn and to implement in everyday operation in order to provide better services for the kids. Parent club from Jim Foundation and support group for parents from our colleagues from Romania. This is something that Judith already spoke about, and I already told you that, you know, nowadays everything is on Facebook and on Twitter, and there are a couple of thousand Facebook groups where you can post questions and so on and so on. But real life support group and network can often help, because when parents meet face to face with each other, they can support each other, they can answer each other's questions, especially if there is a group of parents that have children of various ages. So some of them already have some experience, some of them are all, you know, anticipating the problems throughout the life, and it's definitely better than virtual groups. One more beneficial thing is that the topics might not be only autism related, so it can be like a chit chat room or a safe space just to share your problems and ideas. And what was really interesting for me is that the colleagues from Jim Foundation actually focus more on fathers. So they have father-oriented topics and discussions because fathers tend to process the issue of autism a bit more difficult. Also, one of the things that I think could be beneficial is sibling support group, because I mean, me as a sister, I know that, you know, how much I needed answers for a lot of questions, and I have had a luck always to be near the Serbian Association, you know, to get the answers to my questions. But a lot of children just don't have that opportunity. And of course, visiting Tirgu Mureș, we visited workshops about life skills. That is, you know, always very, very important, since the adults with autism are often overlooked. And of course, me having a personal you know, experience with my 41-year-old brother, I really know how much life skills are important to prepare our children and siblings for the life after biological family. So something not to be specifically proud of are state help. We had a long discussion about the ways that our states help us. And unfortunately, we discovered that we all have the same problems and the same lack of support, meaning that there is little or no state support aimed at the parents or caretakers. And it is often limited to, let's say, external maternity leave, a family allowance, and social or disability allowance. If you add a parking card, I think that's pretty much what the state offer for us. Also, we are living in a time of inclusive education. In Serbia, the inclusive education exists for 10 or 11 years now, but it is still a challenge, unfortunately. It is a challenge everywhere. And of course, there's a disproportion of the support. We do have personal assistance in the law, so we have a good law, but the practice of the law is really bad. So we are trying always to find ways to support parents of school children better. Of course, the adults, I already mentioned. Unfortunately, anywhere there are no solution or very few solutions for adults on the spectrum, no support of the state in Serbia whatsoever, or possibilities to help them and to help their families outside the NGO. Of course, the parents are already aging, they're getting all the chronic issues and disabilities, and the life is getting more and more hard on them, but still without a state solution. So unfortunately, the decision makers seem not to be interested in solving the problems, or they do not understand the problems. So the majority of the struggle and the tasks are still on parent associations and NGOs. So this is why I put the next topic, just to have some encouragement about what other external partners offer in partner countries. When we visited Budapest, they took us to Kocka Csoki. Kocka Csoki is a non-profit chocolate manufacturer that employs autistic adults. They not only manufacture the chocolate, but they also distribute it, and then they develop contracts with various companies that they use their chocolate as a present for their clients. They were in a development of a cafe, I think. So probably the cafe was open in the meantime. And this is also a way to socialize and to develop social and communication skills for the autistic adults. One other magnificent thing that we witnessed was in Łódź, in Poland, the city of culture, where we visited an institution run jointly by the city of Łódź and the Ministry of Culture. And it is actually like a center for science and technology. And with the help of Jim Foundation, they adjusted the needs of neurodivergent people and those who are sensitive or have sensory overload issues. So they developed a map which shows in which parts of the center a person could be exposed to what stimuli. So with this idea, we had a cooperation in Serbia with the Deleze company, which is a chain of supermarkets, Belgian chain of supermarkets. And this summer, they have opened a first quiet hour shopping supermarket in Belgrade, which is only a pilot shop, but they intend within the next 2 years to open more and more shops throughout the Serbia with the quiet hour shopping, with the dimmed lights and a special cash register and no music and whatsoever. So I think we are going in a pretty decent direction. And I would like to finish with another adult issue. And we had the opportunity to visit Petra's house in Târgu Mureș, our Romanian colleagues, which is a supported living facility for adults and is ran by the Clever Heinz Foundation. And unfortunately, as I said, the government is not supporting very much, only 10%. And the rest is funded by parents and donations, which is maybe a little bit discouraging. But then on the other hand, it gives you a hope that you can make something similar in your own country, in parallel with asking from the state solution. You just don't need to not do anything. You just need to do both, and you can achieve everything. So yeah, these are our encouraging experiences. I thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sončica. That was a really very well structured presentation, and at the end of the event, actually I will show you all the participants the pictures about those visits, because without discussing it beforehand, we were also collecting pictures from the project, and basically we choose those kind of pictures which were made on these places you mentioned. So it's amazing, and also it's almost personal, but I love how you say kocka csoki because it's just perfect. So thank you. And now I would like to ask Anna from the Gym Foundation to make her presentation.
Yes, I am. Thank you for the voice. So first of all, I want to show my presentation. So I will share my screen. So please give me a second. Okay. Okay, it's everything fine? Okay, so I would like to start. So my name is Anna. I work at the Gym Foundation, and on behalf of all participants of the Erasmus project, I would like to tell you about our impression and conclusion from participation in this program. But as I am speaking only, first of all, I would like to introduce everyone who was participate in the project. So from Polish participants of the program are Marcin Krzyżanowski, CEO, founder and deputy president of Gym Foundation, Małgorzata Grobelna, representative for advocacy at the Gym Foundation, Kasia Waliszek, mom of Mateusz and Kuba and member of the Gym Club, Magda Wojciechowska-Krzyś, mom, a member of the Gym Club, and Monika Podolczak-Ignaś, mom, also member of the Gym Club. As a part of the project, we had an opportunity to host other participants in Poland. And it was a great opportunity to introduce the foundation services, talk about fundraising, and see how EC1 is a historical power plant, as Sanchita said, the first facility in which fully adapted to needs of people with autism spectrum. And then we had the opportunity to visit other countries, and the first was Serbia. In Serbia, we had, excuse me, during the stay in Belgrade, we visited a special school with a greatest surprise was the treatment room created and reflecting the doctor office. It is a great idea that would be worth implementing in Poland because the parents who participate in the meeting pointed out that such a room would help to fear of a real visit a doctor, which is often faced by children with the autism spectrum. The next day we visited a cafe where disabled people work, a lovely place, lovely people, wonderful coffee. And of course, in the next room, Protix had their own tailor workshops where they could sell things made by them. It's a great solution. Adults with disabilities earn their own money and they feel needed. In Poland, you can also meet such initiatives. For example, in Warsaw, we've got a similar cafe called Życie jest fajne, which means life is fun. And the experiences from the trip to Belgrade show that it is a great initiative that needs to be developed so that people on autism spectrum can be independent. Okay, and the next slide. So we also had the opportunity to visit the residents of the house for adults with spectrum. And it was amazing place to observe how therapists did everything to create the right condition for the Protix. This place was created together by parents, teachers, and therapists. Within the walls in this place, you could feel love, understanding, and this is the most important element in our and our children's life. And the next step was time to meeting Romania and Tigru Mureș. And this country we also had an opportunity to visit a unique house and unique inhabitants. It is adults with disabilities who learn to live independently under the watchful eye of their careers. They cook, keep order, and they wear jobs themselves. We also visit a workplace for some residents of Peter House. We have seen them create wonderful pottery dishes and candle for warrior occasion. We also had a chance to take a part in workshop prepared especially for parents. It was a very nice experience. So it's time for a summary. So what good practices would we like to develop after the end of the project? First of all, the most important is creating program aimed at independence of people on the autism spectrum, adapting as many objects as possible to the needs of the people of the autism spectrum. That's the second. Creating job for people on the autism spectrum, creating places to stay for adults on the autism spectrum, support for parents of people on the autism, and integration of their families. Working on solution in which the parents is, for example, a teacher supporting with child for which he revise payment, as am I right, does is example from Romania, that something like this is possible. And to summary all of this, we are very pleased that the GYM Foundation had the opportunity to take a part in such a project. We had the chance to see, hear from others about caring for people on the autism spectrum and their families. We have learned a lot from each other. Although we still have a long way to go. Together we can improve the lives of our children, is only in Poland, but all over the Europe, or maybe all, even the world. It was a wonderful experience, different country, different people, different cultures, and yet all the same. We share the same problems, the same joys, and the same sorrow. And we try to make our children have a good life in the same way. If we join forces and stand together side by side, the future will be better. And in Poland, and in Hungary, in Romania, and Serbia, of course. So thank you for your attention. That's all from me.
Thank you, Anna, and I really thankful for your last sentence. That yeah, I think that is one of the main goal of the project. Like, you know, join forces and pulling together all the information and learning from each other. So thank you again. And now I would like to ask Iringo from the Transylvanian Foundation, Key Foundation, to make her presentation. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity, first of all. And of course, we had a great time being partners in this project. Somehow I named my presentation What Parents Dream Comes True, because you have these places in different towns, and all the towns we visited, we founded statues or places where you can rub actually to have an extra help in your dreams coming true. And somehow this project demonstrated us that if a parent has a dream for his child or for his community and works for it hard, then it can come true. Actually, all the best practices and the good examples what we heard today were started by parents of autistic children or adults, and their motivation was very strong, of course, being part of the problem to actually solve the problem. And I was very happy to see these good examples. I don't know why, but it's not moving now, my screen. But hopefully will. Let's see again. It seems like So a little bit about our association. We are a very small organization working on local and international level. And locally, we have beneficiaries like special needs children, teachers, and parents. And we run all kinds of activities, trainings, support groups, conferences to these beneficiary groups, what I already mentioned. And internationally, we are working on lobby and advocacy. And of course, we are very interested in exchanging of know-how, especially regarding special needs, and of course, also autism. And first of all, we had great fun meeting all these parents and specialists and organizations working in the field of autism, and especially parents with autistic children. But there were some high points in our visits. Already was mentioned Kocka Csoki chocolate manufacturing. And for me, it was the most important that a couple, two parents, imagined this as a solution for autistic adults having a child with autism. Somehow they envisioned a kind of future plan for their own child also, but first of all to help acceptance and understanding around autism. And I think this is the most important thing, because Kocka Csoki has not only a workshop, but also a meeting point already, where you can just enter and have a coffee or organize a kind of meeting. So it's really nice to see this idea of being in the middle of a social happening and being still autism specific. In Poland, we admired very much the very wide range of services offered by Jim Foundation. When we came home, one of the parents who was with us wrote an article in a local magazine, actually, about a dream she had for her child, that all these services could be found also here in Târgu Mureș. Of course, it was interesting to see Budapest and Belgrade because they are capitals, but Lodz is not a capital of a country, and still there is such a great service provider. Târgu Mureș is also just a smaller city in Romania, so it's not the capital, so it's not so easy to make this kind of big institution where a lot of services can be provided. So actually it's still a kind of dream, but I believe that if a parent is motivated enough, can work for bringing this dream alive somehow. And in Serbia, it was really interesting to see how a long run activity can help the awareness and how can services actually be born from this kind of long term involvement, because from 77, since this organization was born, there were many years of activity in which they actually helped and supported a lot of families with autistic people, and also helped in developing services. Of course, when you are in foreign countries, you always try to compare, and our learnings were a little bit based on this kind of comparisons. We compared educational services, and we saw that, of course, here in Târgu Mureș are also very good educational services. There are social services, there are medical services, and everywhere there are very specific these services. They are not the same, but every country is finding its own way. But actually is missing here the services for autistic adults, like state-owned services, I mean, because education and medical services, let's say, they are quite okay and similar to other countries, but somehow it seems like being a special need person stops when you stop school, and after that there is no real support and very little help or no social enterprises like we saw in Belgrade and in Budapest. So what we thought it is very important for us that we have a very good parent community here, and that helps us to work around these ideas what we got through this project, and helps somehow to make these dreams happen actually, or somehow contribute to these ideas what we got and would be doable also here in Romania. So this project was very good to help us imagine what we could do. And as I mentioned in the beginning of my presentation, what I experienced is that if there is a motivated and very determined parent or parent group, actually all these services can be somehow made functional. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Iringo. It's really amazing to see that we got the same conclusion, more or less, that the project itself is actually got the outcome that we hoped for, that if we can visit each other and if we can see how others are dealing with the difficulties, then we can bring something home and we can start to implement new ideas or new projects. So I am so happy to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now I will make really just a very, very short summary. So I hope so I can. Anyway, so first of all, thank you for everyone who contributed to this closing event with any presentation or comment. I am happy that we kind of could show almost all of the stakeholders, because we heard an autistic person itself, we also heard a sibling, we heard parent, we heard professionals. So you see that that we can be really successful if all the stakeholders are working together, and this is one of my kind of thing that I am always speaking about. The other thing I know and experience for more than 10 years now, as I am working on the field of autism, that we do not speak enough about how to support parents. And in the meantime, we all see that many burden, many tasks, many problems are falling back to the families. So they also need support, not only the autistic family member, who of course need therapy and support and understanding and so on. But I think the role of the parents, the role of the families are really, really huge. And you already heard that besides having many very serious meetings we were really analyzing the services, the service network in different kind of countries. We were trying to compare it to each other, but beside, as you can see on the photos, we also have had many fun. This is the EC1 center, which was already mentioned by Sunčica. This is in Vuj, and we have had fun here. And then Then we had first cultural experience in Belgrade, and then also a very, very nice and very successful, as you can see on the pictures, that half of the group is already sleeping, but it was really the very, very end of the day in Tirkumuresh. And then, I mean, the Kockachoki was already mentioned a million times, and we are happy that the participants get some ideas from this visit as well. But at the end, I really would like to show you that we released a very small research, because the original question of this PROPAR project was what kind of support services are parents missing? I mean, support for the families in this time. You heard it in the presentation that we know that many services are still missing for the autistic child or adult itself. But then again, as many presenter said, that the parents are the engine. If they cannot be there, then really they are kind of driving the road. They are showing the road where the autistic child or adult can go. They need support for that, and we really wanted to know what kind of support the families are missing the most, because all of the participants who was part of this 2 years long Erasmus Plus project have some kind of parent support. They are providing some kind of parent support, and we want, of course, to develop our services, all of the foundations, all of the associations, and we just really wanted to know which is the one that is missing the most. We release this questionnaire in every country, of course, on the local language, and we got nearly 500 answers. And here you can see the outcome, and it's the most popular is an online map of services. We of course described a little bit more all of this type of the supports, and the online map of services. It's some kind of I don't know, like a Google map for autistic parents, where they can find all the autism specific services, and they also can edit that, and they can put some services on and so on. It's a huge dream. I think that would be, and it's not only me, but as you see, the results is that many parents would really like to have something like that, because anything is changing in a life of autistic person, then there is always a huge gap. If they have to find first a diagnosis, then it's difficulty, then a kindergarten is difficulty, then finding a school difficulty, and so on. I think the presenters were speaking about that. So to have a kind of online roadmap to support that would be nice. The next one is a psychologist consultation for parents, because then again, we are really focusing a lot to the autistic family member, and sometimes we are just forgetting, but Judith really showed nicely on her slides that the parents are also get exhausted, they get tired, they get burned out, and they also need some support. And the next on the list, it's hand in hand with the psychologist consultation is the face-to-face consultation with expert. Of course, we know that because parents always get questions. Of course, they want to have a real answer, not to find crazy information on some kind of, I don't know, social media website. The training for parents is very popular as well, and as you see, see the next one is the personal assistant, but right after the parent group and support group, which means parents are really looking for the possibility to meet each other. And we have this experience that one of the most common answer when we ask parents after a training or a parent group what was the most important thing on that training or on that parent group, they are answering that what we learned, that we are not alone, and the families are looking for this feeling. And of course they would love to have some kind of structured way to meet. Personal assistant for the person with autism, of course it's more about the person with autism, though it was mentioned by the meaning like having a personal assistant to give the possibility for the families to have some rest, to go to a holiday or to go to a movie, or even, I don't know, go to shopping without any distraction. And then the next is the online consultation with experts. I have to mention that we made this research before the pandemic, so maybe that would be more popular these days. But we see that even without pandemic, parents are happy to have online consultation as well, because sometimes they just cannot travel to meet face-to-face with the expert. We also see the legal advice, which is understandable, because just as I mentioned, if you have to transfer autistic family member from one service to the other, it's always difficult. And it's kind of all the parents or the families supposed to be like expert in every kind of state support, which they are not. So they need some legal advice how to manage the life or how to find a service for the family member. And the next one is the leisure time with other families, and it's still coming together, I think, with the parent training, parent group, and leisure time. And then as we see, informational brochures and helpline, of course, parents want to have it, but what I read out from this small research, that they are really preferring the the interactive face-to-face meetings and possibilities. So that's the main outcome of this project. But basically, I think all of the presenters mentioned many other side effects and many other outcomes, like what did they learn in one places that they already started implementing the other places, and it was only a 2 years long project. So I myself, I feel it's successful. So this is basically what we wanted, and Sunchitsa said it best when she said that it's a snowball effect, and this is what we wanted to have. If you are looking for more information about this project, you can find it on the page of the Marsh Foundation. It's Hungarian, sorry, so it's www.marsalapítvány.hu, HU. But if you are typing Marsh Autism Foundation, you will find it as well, and there you will find all the links to the other participants as well, to see what are they doing. And so this is it. Thank you for being here, and I hope you enjoyed our meeting. Have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.